Smith. I am a writer and a reader and an obsessive bibliophile. I've also been a hoarder of books up until kind of recently. I've been trying to actually get rid of the books I don't like, but last time I did my 5 best books that I own, and I promised a 5 worst books that I own for some reason. I picked those out. This was actually super hard because I don't tend to keep books anymore that I think are really bad. So these are by no means like the 5 worst books I've ever read. That I would have to look at my Goodreads and like think real hard. But these are the 5 worst books on my shelves right now. I don't think I own any books that are like complete trash. So with that caveat, I could do a whole other video on like my 5 most problematic books. So these aren't like the 5 books who had themes that offended me or something like that. Like that's not it. Just these are the 5 books that I think, in terms of interest and literary value, that they are the worst. If you want a 5 most problematic books that I own, let me know in the comments. So let's get into it. So the 5 worst books that I own currently physical copies of. We're gonna start with this one, Paris by the Book by Liam Callahan. This really should have got me. Like, I'm such a hoe for Paris content, but I've been severely disappointed by some books that are about Paris. In this book, it's basically about a woman who her brilliant writer husband goes missing, and so she goes to Paris sort of to hunt him down, sort of to like connect with his memory and the memory of like their past. But she like moves their children, like takes them out of their schools and stuff to go with her to Paris. It's annoying. Like I did not finish this book. It's not very pretty. It's not very fun, and it's mostly this weird self-absorption on the part of this author, this guy, seemingly writing about his wife missing him. Like, it's like his fantasy. Have you ever thought about like, man, what would my funeral be like? This guy wrote like a whole book about it. So it's very self-centered. The children are like these empty side characters. Like I said, I didn't, but I got through, like, look, that's how far I got. I got to page 169. Nice. But I got to page 169, so it's not like I didn't give it a chance. It just wasn't interesting. And I was trying so hard because, like, you know, there was stuff in there about Paris, and I'm a hoe for Paris content. And also as a gift from my grandmother. My grandma bought herself a copy, which was super cute, so I was trying to finish it. But don't worry, she's not gonna be offended if she sees this, because she's ultimately the reason I did not finish it, because she finished it, and she was like, Riley, don't feel like you have to finish it. It was not very good. Like, somehow the man is not in the book, and yet he makes it all about him. And it's very self-centered. It's not even really about the city. It's not even really about the wife. It's not terrible writing, but it's not very interesting. It's very mopey, has all the problems of like really introspective books without the benefits, because the wife doesn't feel like a real person. She just is a mirror for missing the husband. The next worst book that I have, okay, so it's bad, Austen. The worst stories Jane never wrote. I understand. It's supposed to be bad, like that's the point. Like the point is that they did this contest and they invited people to basically write like Jane Austen inspired fan fiction that is bad. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be obnoxious, satirical. It just ended up boring. Because it says, enjoy a new collection of hilarious efforts to write the worst excerpt from the novel Jane Austen never wrote. It's not hilarious. People either directly quote Austen, or what they write has barely anything to do with her. There's a couple good stories in here, like any short story collection. There's one really interesting one with like an Austenized version of Scooby-Doo, which stuck with me. I think that's great. So there's a couple of clever things, but really, even in like a short book like this, and all the stories are so short, they weren't even bad enough to be interesting. They were just directly quoting Jane Austen and writing lukewarm, boring stuff. It's basically like one of those kind of cheesy coffee table-y books, but I still put it on my worst books that I own because I believe in judging books according to the genre that they're in. Like, a thriller should be judged by how thrilling it is. Literary fiction should be judged by the beauty of the language and characterization. A thriller doesn't necessarily need amazing characterization, although it can help. But, you know, a romance novel requires good romance that is interesting and a connection and chemistry between the characters. But it doesn't necessarily require, like, sweeping themes, necessarily, if it's a lighthearted romance. I just believe in judging books based on the intent And I was really going into this intending to enjoy it, intending to just see some really atrocious mockery of Austen, and it was not. It was just real boring. Those are pretty much the only 2 books that I own that I think are like bad, like totally bad and like not worth your time at all. Like I'd say steer clear of those. They're not worth your time to read them. Now we're getting into more just like these are the worst. These are bottom of the barrel. They might have some redeeming qualities because I did still keep them. Like I haven't put them in a little library or donated them or anything yet, but like I still think these are probably like the worst. We've got an entry from my business bookshelves, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Look at this punchable motherfucker. This is like a book about, you know, it's a process for achieving success in your life. And like any life coach or success consultant, anything like that, they all have some good advice. Is it gonna actually work for you? Who knows? A big thing about this book is it's not gonna work if you're neurodivergent. It's so basic, like because they're trying to like make it applicable for everybody and it's small and overpriced, they're trying to make it so simple that it could potentially give you some kind of wisdom for everybody, but it's like, it's not any better than like reading a random page out of the Bible for guidance. You know, like it's so, even that might be, because you have to do some interpretation there, right? You have to do some work there, but it's like so simple. And I do think you can get some things out of it, but it definitely doesn't need to be a whole book. I don't think that this book in itself is horrible. It's got some good advice, but it's an overly simple system that will not really work for you. A lot of the things in there do not work for you unless you are the same personality type as the guy who wrote this. And sure, some people are, but unless you're neurotypical and the same personality type as this guy, the whole system isn't gonna work for you. There were like 2 chapters in there that really had any type of insight that I felt like could help my own life, but there were at least 2 chapters, so not totally unredeemable. It's like $20, so it's not worth it. And he like goes over all of this stuff. Like you could probably watch it in like the videos or listen to it on Spotify. He like talks about all this stuff anyway in his other content, if you were really curious. I don't think I like him as a person. He does occasionally have good advice about goal setting and productivity. I just wouldn't recommend you give him any of your money. But hey, I'm not a multi-millionaire, so what do I know, I guess. Okay, this next one I can explain. Give me a second to explain. All right, so the next one is The Soul Would Have No Rainbow If the Eyes Had No Tears by Guy Azona, which I'm so confident is a pseudonym. Sayings of time-honored truth and contemporary wisdom from the Native American tribes. Here's my problem with this book. You get like 2 quotes a page. They're not organized in any way. Maybe you get 3 quotes a page. You get told what tribe it is, but the tribes, it's all randomly mixed up in here. There's not any actual structure. So you kind of just get this like disconnected, decontextualized bucket of random aphorisms that are devoid of their cultural context. And some of them are like opposites. You know, like some of them will be like, the brave man is the one who fulfills his duty and runs into battle even though he is outnumbered. And then the other one will be like, it is not brave to run into battle when you are outnumbered. It is stupid. You know, like that's literally like, obviously I didn't say it quite right, but there are 2 quotes in there that are like the exact opposite, and that happens a ton in the book because Native American is not a monoculture. There are similarities, and I don't know enough to say anything more than that. I don't know enough to say anything more than that, and I definitely didn't learn more from this book, besides it even more cemented for me that I'm tired of seeing Native Americans presented to me as a monoculture. This is just like a little book at the Grand Canyon that you can buy, a little touristy book. Call me a social justice warrior, but I thought this book was super pointless. It's just decontextualized vague sayings. An angry word is like striking with a knife from the Hopi. Some of these are even tribe unknown. Like, what am I supposed to get out of that? I just hate the, like, decontextualized, like, nothingness of these kind of vague phrases. But it's cute. It's a cute book. So again, I don't think it's irredeemable or terrible. It's just, like, I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I think it's probably one of the worst books I own. But I keep it because my grandma gave it to me as a keepsake from the Grand Canyon, and I love her. And will keep everything she's ever handed me, including sticky notes. It was actually really hard to find the 5th book. I promised 5, so I looked for 5. There were several kind of runners up, but in the 5th slot here is really books that are like fine, but compared to the other books I own are really not as worth your time as a lot of the really wonderful books that I own. I guess I also like, I avoided a lot of books that I've started and stopped because I couldn't get into them. I don't feel like I can really judge them, but they didn't grab me. So I almost picked those books, but I decided to stick with stuff that I've like finished. So there were a couple of like runner-ups for this spot, but ultimately for the 5th worst book that I own, I picked Bloody Irish by Bob Curran. This is purely because he's just not that good of a fiction writer. The lore that he uses as his like inspiration is really cool. It's Irish vampire stories. That's fucking awesome. Like, I didn't realize how many like vampire legends there are in Ireland. A lot of the myths sprang from the famine, and the horrible things that people had to do to survive are the things that we would be like squeamish about nowadays, but that they just had to do to make it. Like if they had a cow, they wouldn't slaughter and eat the cow necessarily, but they would drink the blood of the cow because you could get some nutrients that way without completely losing the cow. And you know, that obviously gets like turned into bigger myths over time. Bob Curran is a folklorist. I've actually read some of his other stuff and really enjoyed it, but that was presented as more encyclopedic. This is his attempt to take an Irish legend and turn it into a piece of original fiction, and it just wasn't that good. The book itself is interesting, and I still did enjoy it because I liked getting a look at the like Irish vampire lore, but I would have much preferred that he just presented the original stories that he like did his research on rather than try to like craft his own fictionalized version. But this was a stretch to find the 5th book, so it's not a terrible book. I think I gave it like 3 stars, maybe 2 stars, I can't remember. But it still won 5th place because even the other books that I was like, this isn't that good, I felt like they had better writing than this one did. I will say that the only book out of these 5 that really fills me with vitriol is probably Paris by the Book. I also think the bad Jane Austen one is embarrassing for them because like what an easy task that you just like still managed to not get it in the hoop. You know what I'm saying? It's a simple task. Bad Jane Austen, just make it interesting at least a little bit, and they still did not manage it. But the Paris by the Book one was really disappointing, especially because I kept trudging through it, but it felt like such a chore to read. I don't know about you, but I get really annoyed when books get a bunch of like, there's a bunch of like good writers on the back of this, like recommending it, and this book was like kind of hyped. And it was like, whatever. I don't know. All comes down to taste, I guess. But those are what I think are the 5 worst books that I currently own physical copies of. What are the 5 worst books that you own? I would love to know. Put it down in the comments below. If there's anything you would like, you know, any other series like this you would like me to do. I just did a library trip and I'm gonna film the library haul, so I'm super excited about that. And I'm gonna do my 5 favorite books. Show off the books I actually like that are up here. So make sure you subscribe. Also, I am a writer, so if after that you feel like you agree with some of the things that I said about what makes a bad book, you'll probably think my books are pretty good. Although it would be funny for me to do a video of like which are my worst books that I've written. I don't agree with like the ones that have the lowest rating. Some of them I do. You can check my books out in the description below. Some of them are even pretty good, so check them out. Some of them even have like 5 stars on Goodreads and Amazon. Check those bad boys out. Working on a new novel right now, so make sure you subscribe, follow on Amazon, and I have a Patreon if you're interested. I do book reviews there too as well. I do more detailed book reviews on my Patreon, which you can follow for free. Follow the book reviews for free. So thank you so much for joining me. Let me know your worst books in the comments below. See you next time. Say goodbye, Lyle. Say goodbye. Yeah. Oh, hello.